Demons, creatures born from the realm of chaos, can shapeshift into countless forms to spread sheer terror. There are demons that take the form of a bed, seemingly harmless, but in reality inside is a living organism, with umbilical cords writhing like veins and a bloated belly that can rip open into a massive maw filled with jagged teeth, snapping down on a fast-asleep victim. There are even demons hiding within ordinary-looking jars of pickles, where each pickle quivers and squirms like raw flesh. When those jars shatter, those grotesque body parts will crawl out, entwine, and merge into a hideous, nameless shape. And all of them, whether the bed, the pickles, or something else, are just different manifestations of the same single entity, the embodiment of primal fear and the ultimate revulsion deep within the human mind. Welcome to the town of Derry. That night at the Capitol Movie Theater, the audience was glued to the screen watching The Music Man. Among them was a boy named Matty. Even though he was already 10 years old, he still loved sucking on a pacifier like a newborn. While lost in the movie, Matty was accidentally spotted by the manager, Can. Without hesitation, he immediately bolted outside. Seeing this, an employee named Han asked Can curiously, "What's going on?" The manager replied that this was the third time Matty had sneaked in to watch for free. Han turned to ask his daughter, Ronnie, if she saw which way Matty ran. Ronnie thought for a moment. Even though she saw Matty hiding nearby, Ronnie pointed the manager in a different direction. Taking the chance, Matty dashed out of the theater and disappeared from Can's sight. He grumbled that if Matty tried to freeload again, he'd call the cops. On the way home, Matty thought to himself, maybe there's nothing left in this town for me anymore. So he stuck out his thumb to hitch a ride from a car, carrying a couple and their 2 children, a boy and a girl. Feeling sorry for Matty, they gave him a lift. The wife was even kind enough to give him a blanket to stay warm. Then the husband asked Matty for his parents' address so he could drop him off. However, Matty replied that they could take him anywhere, as long as it wasn't Derry. The wife happily mentioned they were headed to Portland. "Yes, that works too," Matty said. So the couple didn't ask any more questions. At that moment, the radio was broadcasting news about nuclear tests in Moscow, and experts were warning that radiation could become a global threat. Finding the news rather dull, the 2 kids asked their mother to change the channel. Sitting beside them, Matty didn't mind at all. Suddenly, the older sister, Olin, dipped her hand into a blood-red liquid inside a plastic container. Then she thrust it toward Matty, which made him feel uneasy. Yet the other family members began laughing in a bizarre and manic way. The atmosphere grew increasingly tense. Matty looked out the window and realized they were heading back to Derry. Confused, he realized the family wasn't going to Portland after all, so Matty begged the husband to stop the car. But the man ignored Matty and even cranked up the radio volume. This action terrified the boy. Seeing a gas station on the side of the road, Matty pleaded with the husband to stop and let him use the restroom. However, the man remained stone-faced and didn't answer. The son began spelling out terrifying words. Then the other family members followed suit, repeating the letters in unison like some twisted song. They completely disregarded Matty's presence. Paralyzed with fear, he tried to open the door to escape, but it was locked tight. Desperate, the boy lunged forward and grabbed the steering wheel, trying to veer the car off the road. In the middle of the struggle, accidentally hitting the wife's belly caused her immense pain. Contractions signaled that she was going into labor. Yet the other family members didn't seem worried at all. They just kept on spelling. A few seconds later, baby was finally born, letting out its first cries. The husband was overjoyed at the sight. Matty leaned in, curious to see what the baby looked like. Oh my God! It wasn't human, it was a monster. A horrific and aggressive beast. Despite that, the father and the rest of them laughed. Hysterically, the monster flew wildly around the car, still attached to its umbilical cord. Holy crap, that thing is a handful for a newborn. Then it set its sights on Matty and attacked. It sent his pacifier flying out and into a storm drain. 4 months later, Matty's disappearance remained a mystery. The year is now 1962. Today is the day Major Leroy and Captain Russo prepare to take on their new assignment at Derry Air Force Base. Greeting them is Colonel Fuller. He said that the skills and experience of Leroy would be very useful in Derry, because even though this base is remote, it's actually one of the 6 most critical facilities in the country. Moreover, Soviet airspace is only a 7-hour flight away. So if a nuclear threat were to arise, we'd be the first to get the call to jump into battle. While touring the facility, Leroy and Russo accidentally came across a restricted area. Both were curious about what was inside. Colonel Fuller quickly changed the subject. He asked Leroy where he planned to stay. He replied that he had rented a house in the town of Derry. In a day or 2, his wife and children would be moving in with him. Hearing this, the colonel happily stated that Leroy's family would surely love Derry right away, as it was such a peaceful place. With that said, the colonel took Leroy into the base to meet his team. Inside, there was a private named Matter, who showed a defiant and disrespectful attitude toward Major Leroy. Everyone could easily see it. This was a clear case of racism. Matter was bitter when he found out his direct superior was a black man. Just then, General So appeared. He barked at Matter, calling him disrespectful and undisciplined. As the head of the base, the general ordered Matter to show the proper conduct of a soldier toward his superior officer. Otherwise, he'd face a court-martial, and the outcome would be ugly. Hearing that, Private Matter immediately gave Major Leroy a sharp salute. General XO then led Leroy into the office. He explained that the Department of Defense transferred Leroy here to test a new aircraft, since Leroy was a top-tier pilot during the Korean War. Meanwhile, a kid named Phil was a total aviation geek. Every day he'd take some time to watch the planes in the sky over Derry and log them in his notes. Afterward, he went to school to meet his best friend Teddy. With a vivid imagination, Phil guessed that inside the Air Force base, maybe they were busy researching aliens. But Teddy didn't give a damn about that nonsense. Over here, Lily opened her locker when suddenly a jar of pickles fell out and shattered everywhere. Her friend Matt figured it was probably a prank by some mean-spirited jerk. Luckily, Lily didn't get any of the mess on her. But when she got home after school, Lily sadly touched her bracelet, thinking of her friend Maddie. He was the only one who was ever nice to her. Before Maddie went missing, he had taken Lily to the lookout to talk, since it had been abandoned for years and was deserted. Seeing Lily so down, Maddie curiously asked what happened to her father. She honestly told him that on that day, she and her mother went to pick up her dad from work at a factory that produced pickles and other similar products. As they were leaving the factory, Lily accidentally left behind a toy ring that she absolutely loved. Even though it was just a cheap trinket, her dad still went back inside to find it. At that exact moment, a machine happened to be jammed, being the helpful type. Lily's dad eagerly stepped in to fix the machine, even though it wasn't his responsibility. He thought the power was cut at the breaker, but the foreman realized he'd switched off the breaker for the wrong machine. As a result, Lily's dad was torn to shreds. His death haunted Lily deeply. She blamed herself for making the mistake of forgetting that ring, which led to this heartbreaking tragedy. Seeing her like this, Maddie consoled her, telling her not to get stuck in such dark thoughts. It was just a freak accident that nobody wanted. Suddenly, fireworks exploded in the night sky, creating a very romantic vibe. Seizing the moment, Maddie got bold and tried to make out with her, but Lily dodged him, because she had only ever seen Maddie as a friend. Mortified by the rejection, he immediately left. Remembering this, Lily blamed herself again. Could it be that Maddie didn't want to see her, and that's why he'd been missing for months? Suddenly, Lily heard Maddie's voice, coming from the bathtub drain. She immediately asked, "Where are you? I'm so sorry about that night. Please just come home." Maddie didn't say a word, but responded with an eerie song. Then bloody fingers suddenly poked out, causing Lily to scream at the top of her lungs in panic. The next morning at school, Lily told Matt everything that happened. To her surprise, Matt didn't believe her, thinking Maddie was dead. If she kept talking about him at school, other people would think she was losing her mind. So Matt advised Lily to stop bringing up Maddie. But Lily was determined to get to the bottom of this. She sought out Phil and Teddy at the observatory and recounted the incident in the bathroom. Teddy seriously asked if she was absolutely sure that was Maddie's voice. "I'm 100% positive it was Maddie." But Finn and Teddy weren't really buying it. They were skeptical about how someone could even talk through a sewer pipe. Frustrated that no one believed her, Lily just walked away. That night at the Air Force Base, Leroy was sleeping when he was suddenly ambushed by 3 guys wearing gas masks. They used a gun to force him to give up the specs of a secret aircraft. Despite the threat to his life, Leroy didn't say a damn word. Losing their cool, the stranger was about to fire just as Russo knocked on the door. Seizing the chance, Leroy lunged forward to fight back. Russo also burst in to back up his teammate, knocking the intruders back. Afraid their identities would be blown, the thugs were forced to flee. Meanwhile, Teddy was reading a comic book when the lights suddenly cut out. He turned them back on, but they clicked off again. Teddy flipped the switch again, and for the 3rd time, they went out. On the 3rd try, a human face suddenly appeared on the lampshade, scaring Teddy so bad he fell to the floor. The lampshade even started rolling toward him on its own. Oh my God, why is this so freaking creepy? But when Teddy's brother opened the door, everything went back to normal. The next day, Teddy immediately met Finn and Lily at the lookout to tell them everything. At this point, the 3 of them were certain that Maddie was trying to contact them through some kind of paranormal way. So the trio decided to hit the library to investigate what exactly happened to Maddie. There they found a newspaper article about the disappearance of Maddie. Since 4 months had passed and the authorities still hadn't found a single trace of him, the police had come up with a theory that Maddie might have been murdered by some drifter who hid the body. The article also noted that Maddie was last seen on January 4th at the Capitol Theater, according to the statement from an employee's daughter, who happened to be Ronnie. Immediately, the three friends and Finn's little sister went to find Ronnie to ask her about it. But the girl acted really annoyed. Because of that statement, the police had repeatedly come to their house to interrogate her father. They suspected he was the one behind Maddie's disappearance. That's why Ronnie was super frustrated and didn't want to talk about it anymore. With no other choice, the group had to leave. Finn said that now there was only one clue left, the song that Lily heard coming from the bathtub drain. Hearing that, Ronnie quickly called the group back. Ronnie said she had also heard something similar. Although she wasn't sure if it was Maddie, she had heard voices, children laughing and crying, echoing from the basement of the movie theater through the metal ventilation pipes. So Ronnie decided to join them to find out what really happened to Maddie. So when night fell, the whole group rushed to the Capitol Theater while no one was around. Since the song Lily heard in the drain was from the movie The Music Man, Ronnie immediately started the film for the group to look for more clues. At first, everything seemed normal. Ronnie stood in the projection booth while the four others outside watched the movie intently. A moment later, they suddenly saw Maddie holding a baby and standing with the actors in the film. This left everyone absolutely stunned. They shouted Maddie's name, trying to tell him to come back. Incredibly, Maddie could actually hear and see his friends. However, he didn't look happy and slowly approached the screen. Maddie said the reason he was in the movie was because of their mistake. They were the ones who had abandoned him. Heartbroken, Maddie had gone to the Capitol to drown his sorrows, leading to what had happened to him. After speaking, Maddie's face suddenly becomes eerie and terrifying, frightening even an AI. Then Maddie throws the monstrous baby out of the screen. It has now grown to twice the size of a normal person. Lightning fast, the freakish creature lunges and mauls Teddy to death. Next, it rips Finn apart and throws him against the control room's glass window. Lily is absolutely petrified. She tells Susan to slowly crawl over to her. Ronnie intends to run out to help, but the door suddenly slams shut. She grabs a hammer and smashes the glass to find an escape route. Over here, Susan. Just as she reaches out, she is spotted by the monster and eaten alive. The little girl. By the time Ronnie runs in, Lily is all alone. Immediately, they both head outside and lock the door. The creature's appearance is truly hideous and horrifying. Lily is so terrified that she's still clutching Susan's hand without even realizing it. Strangely enough, the next morning, police only find bloodstains, but no bodies were found at all. For now, they only suspect Han of being the one who kidnapped the children, but they haven't reached any formal conclusion yet. Ronnie doesn't dare tell the whole story, because it's just too far-fetched. In this world, no one would ever believe in things like ghosts and demons. Even Lily chooses to stay silent, saying absolutely nothing to her best friend. Meanwhile, Colonel Fuller has identified the stranger who attacked Leroy. It's none other than Private Maddie. The motive was simple. He just doesn't like people of color like Leroy, that's it. At the moment, Fuller hasn't yet uncovered the identities of the other two. The colonel promised that once they are caught, without a doubt, he will bring them to court-martial and deal with them strictly. Leroy thanks the colonel for his integrity. He then goes to the detention cell to speak with Maddie. First, Leroy places a handgun and a box of ammo right in front of Maddie. Leroy says that this is a Makarov pistol. It's the same black color, identical to the gun that was pointed at his face that night. This type of gun is common behind the East Berlin Wall, but it's very rare around here because it's tricky to use and even harder to load. So Leroy is certain that a low-level private like Maddie couldn't possibly know how to handle a Makarov. Therefore, the person who shoved a gun in Leroy's face that night definitely wasn't Maddie. Who are you taking the fall for? Spill it now. Hearing that, Maddie immediately grabs the gun and tries to jam the magazine in, but he can't do it. Just as Leroy suspected, someone else is the mastermind. Leroy immediately goes to find General Shaw to report the incident, demanding that this matter be cleared up. Otherwise, he'll escalate it to headquarters. Unexpectedly, the general confesses that everything had nothing to do with Maddie. The three men who attacked Leroy were actually the general's subordinates, but he kept their identities secret because it was all just a test to check Leroy's courage. To help him understand the reason, the general takes him into a restricted area. He says that earlier this year, Cuba and the Soviet Union held a summit in Havana. Their goal was to plan the placement of nuclear warheads aimed directly at American soil. Because of this, the Department of Defense established an indoctrination program to search for an ultimate weapon, one that could win the Cold War before the first missile is even fired. And that weapon has been buried here in Derry for a very long time. As for Leroy, he is the only one qualified to help the military retrieve that weapon, because when you get close to it, it creates a paralyzing fear. If a person lacks true grit, they would surely be scared to death on the spot. After hearing the general's explanation, the importance of this operation is tied to national security, so Leroy immediately agrees to take the mission. Later, he heads back to town to pick up his son Win and his beloved wife. From now on, the whole family will live together in the town of Derry. So first things first, Win needs to try and fit in at his new school. However, as soon as he enters the classroom, a bully suddenly kicks his chair, sending him landing hard on his butt. When recess comes, Win is too scared to talk to anyone, so he just sits by himself at the lockers. By chance, he makes friends with a boy named Rick. Just then, some punk student randomly throws a smoke grenade at them and bolts. Since she just moved to this town, Hannah feels a bit out of place. Along the way, she sees a crowd of people protesting very intensely. There are also some punk teenagers, holding beer bottles despite being underage, acting like they're hot shots. The movie theater is currently closed. Hanlon doesn't pay much mind and walks into a butcher shop to buy some pork ribs for dinner. Seeing a new resident, the shop owner introduces himself as Stan, the Cleaver. Just then a boy is being bullied by 3 punks, right in the middle of the street. That boy, yet no one cares enough to go save him, which Hanlon finds baffling. Stan, the Cleaver, simply says it's just normal boy behavior. Finding it intolerable, Hanlon immediately runs over to stop the 3 punks, causing the locals to look at her with judging eyes. They think what Hanlon did was weird. Taking the opportunity, the boy runs off back home. Hanlon irritably recounts the whole thing to Leroy and Win. She doesn't get why the kids in this town are so disrespectful. Worried about her son, Hanlon asks Win if he's being bullied at school. Even though he is, the boy hides it and says everything is fine. Late that night, Ronnie was tucked under her covers about to sleep, when she suddenly started missing her late mother. Suddenly, the bed began making a thumping sound, just like a beating heart. Panicked, Ronnie tried to crawl out, but no matter how hard she pulled, the blanket wouldn't budge. Even more terrifyingly, it abruptly turned red and became covered in veins. Water started flooding in from nowhere, accompanied by a slimy, sticky ooze. In an instant, Ronnie was sinking to the bottom, utterly petrified. The girl struggled desperately, punching a hole to crawl her way out. When she turned to look back, Ronnie realized the space that had just trapped her was actually a fetus. The bed had now transformed into her mother's body. She threatened that they would come to take her dad, Han, and roast him in the fires of hell. With that, the demon revealed its true form and used an umbilical cord to snare Ronnie, pulling her toward a stomach full of teeth. It was absolutely ghastly and horrifying. In that life-or-death moment, she managed to bite through the cord. The demon angrily hissed at Ronnie. "How dare you hurt your own mother? You're not my mother." Hearing this, the demon flew into a rage, stood up, and lunged at her. Just then, her dad, Han, and her grandma rushed in, and everything snapped back to normal. However, the girl was shaken to her core because it felt so real. The next morning, Ronnie decided to go to school to find Lily. She said that it had returned and wanted to take her dad, Han. Lily tried to reassure her friend, telling her not to worry, since none of this had anything to do with him. But Ronnie was still anxious and pleaded for Lily to tell the police the truth. Clearly that night, Finn Russo and Susan were killed by a demon, not by her dad. "Drop it if I testified like that. I'd definitely be thrown into a psych ward. But if you don't tell the truth, how will my dad ever be cleared?" "Look, I don't know about that." Meanwhile, at the Army's weapon excavation site, everyone is so focused on digging that they don't notice a group of teens sneakily watching. After months of digging for the weapon, this is already the 4th location where the Army has deployed its forces, but they still haven't found a thing. Consequently, Colonel Full L is getting pretty frustrated. "Everything is riding on Sergeant Halloran's intuition and guidance, so if you fail again, you'd better watch out." Terrified, Halloran replies that the object is very close. Sure enough, by nightfall, the Army has unearthed a jeep. Inside are several skeletons, leaving the General Leroy and the others completely stunned. The next afternoon, the sheriff summons Lily to question her for information regarding the children who have gone missing recently. Before this, she had testified that on the night of the incident at Capitol Cinema, Mr. Han wasn't even there. "If that's the case, then you're the only prime suspect left, Lily." "Lily, you were found covered in blood at the scene. And besides, you have a prior record of mental health treatment, so everyone's going to be looking at you." "I swear I'm not the one who hurt my friends." "Then you need to give me a statement that makes sense. Otherwise, I'll have to send you to the psych ward to verify the truth of your words." Hearing this, Lily gets terrified, so she sells out her conscience and testifies that Mr. Han is the killer. Immediately, Lily is released, while Mr. Han is arrested by the police for the murder of the children. Knowing her father is being framed, Ronnie runs over to snap at Lily. "Why would you lie to frame someone like that, you bitch?" The next morning, a dazed Lily walks into a supermarket to buy things for her mother. As she pushes her cart looking for food, the people around her, they kept lurking and staring at her with creepy eyes. They even whispered that Lily had gone insane. "You should have been locked up in a psych ward." Hearing that the little girl was terrified and confused, suddenly the loudspeaker blared. "Lily, have you lost your damn mind? There's a sale on Route 8. Why aren't you going? You're stuck here now, kiddo." Suddenly, Lily saw some cookie boxes with pictures on them. Fim and Russo, as well as Monty and Susan. Their faces gradually started to rot away, causing her to panic. Lily immediately ran away, but accidentally wandered into an aisle full of pickle jars, surrounded on all four sides. They formed four walls to trap Lily inside. At that moment, human body parts like livers, hearts, and hands suddenly appeared inside the pickle jars. And here is Lily's dad's head. Oh my God. Why is it so freaking creepy? Come over here and give Daddy a kiss, sweetheart. Kiss my ass. Suddenly, other pickle jars crashed down and shattered together. Then the father's internal organs slowly merged back into him. Slowly. Turns out it was all just a hallucination. After this incident, the mother thought Lily's insanity had relapsed, so she decided to drive her daughter straight to Juniper Psychiatric Institute, handing her over to some perverted doctors. No matter how much the girl begged, it was hopeless. After the military excavated a car and conducted an inspection, Colonel Fuller couldn't find anything except bloodstains and bullet holes. This goes to show that this vehicle was evidence from the scene of the Bradley Gang Massacre. Back in 1935, back then the townsfolk went wild and gunned down the gang. The Bradley case coincidentally had one witness, at the time, who saw a bizarre entity appear. Fuller also mentioned that the excavation site didn't have that weapon anywhere nearby. Even so, General Sun wasn't even surprised, because what he was looking for had been buried in this dairy 300 years before cars were even invented. So finding it isn't going to be easy. Right now, the military can only rely on Private Halloran's psychic abilities to hope for any real results. To cut down on the search time, General Sun decided to put Halloran on a plane to survey the area from a broader view. Meanwhile, Leroy and Russo will personally escort Private Halloran on the mission to increase the chances of success. General Sun handed Fuller a box. Inside was a slingshot. It's bound to help Halloran quickly locate that weapon, because 50 years ago, General Sun was just a kid named Francis. On that day, he was driven by his father to the fair in Derry. There were many performance booths there. The circus was incredibly bustling, leaving the visitors thrilled. However, Francis only noticed the pitch of a long-haired guy. He was advertising that inside, his tent was a collection of freaks, the cruel creations of God. Hearing that, Francis was very curious, so he decided to go into the long-haired guy's tent to see what it was like. There were quite a few visitors in there. Sitting in the corner was a mustached guy playing music. Eerie sounds echoed, and right in front of Francis were two twin sisters, conjoined with their guts hanging out. Next was a violent man locked in an iron cage. Even creepier, there was a werewolf with hairy pits. Suddenly, Francis spotted something lurking at the back of the tent. Curious, he slowly walked deeper in to investigate. All of a sudden, a skinny guy with a torch lunged at him, scaring Francis into running out to his father. The father knew the boy had visited the freak show, which was why he was so scared. So the father gave Francis a slingshot to calm him down. Keep your chin up. On the way home, Francis was thirsty and wanted a soda. But he didn't have enough money, so he had to trade the slingshot for it. Because of his honest attitude, he made friends with a girl, a local named Rose. From that day on, the two of them and the other kids in the village often played together. That day, Francis was so hyped that he ran headlong into the forest. Even though Rose warned him to come back, he wouldn't listen. Suddenly, someone was lurking behind a tree trunk. Terrified, Francis tried to run out of the forest, but he couldn't find the trail anywhere. In a panic, he picked up a branch to defend himself. The stranger kept peeking out, getting closer and closer. Turns out it was that scrawny guy from the creepy circus. Francis quickly ducked between the guy's legs and ran for his life. Just then, Rose landed a perfect stone shot into the demon's eye, saving Francis. The two of them then bolted out of the forest. Only then did Rose tell Francis to stop, because the evil demon was sealed and could never leave that forest. After facing danger together, their friendship became even tighter. Since Francis and his dad were about to leave Derry, when it was time to say goodbye, Francis felt really sad to leave his friend. Seeing this, Rose decided to give the slingshot back as a keepsake for the two of them. That's exactly why General Sun has kept it until now. Immediately, Leroy and Russo piloted the helicopter around the forest near the town of Derry. Halloran sat in the back touching the slingshot since this was the item that once wounded the demon. So Halloran quickly sensed the direction and guided Leroy's flight path. When they reached the spot of that ancient evil, Halloran suddenly began to seize violently. His breathing was shallow and he looked like he was having a stroke. Seeing this, Leroy and Russo got worried, fearing the soldier might die. So they called back to base, requesting to return for emergency care. However, Colonel Fuller and the General Sun already knew that Halloran would have a psychic reaction. So the two big bosses ordered Leroy and Russo to keep flying in the direction Halloran specified. Suddenly he stood up and slowly entered a flooded vision. The door behind him slammed shut unexpectedly. Halloran looked around in a daze, looking up to see piles of dead bodies stacked high. It seemed like this place was a massive underground sewer. There was trash everywhere under Halloran's feet. Suddenly, Halloran's grandmother floated down to warn him that it was coming. Right at that moment, the wooden door with Pennywise the clown on it burst open. A pair of glowing eyes inside asked Halloran, "Who are you?" Then a horrific scene of countless dead people flashed before Halloran's eyes. Panic-stricken, he ran back, fumbling with the handle trying to escape. The two pilots sitting up front were terrified to see the soldier suddenly open the cabin door, about to jump out. Luckily, Leroy pulled Halloran back just in time, snapping him out of it. The three of them immediately headed back to base. General Sun asked Halloran if he had found it. Halloran replied that he hadn't found it, but rather it had found him. Because of this, Halloran had a hunch that if the military kept searching for that weapon, terrible things would definitely happen. Therefore, Halloran advised General Sun to stop the excavation. However, General Sun didn't listen and instead went to an antique shop to meet someone. This was Rose, the one who had saved Sun's life from the demon years ago, since the excavation might disturb the burial grounds of the local indigenous ancestors. General Sun hoped Rose would give him a hand, asking her to show him which spots to avoid, to keep away from the graves. Remembering their old friendship, Rose promised to help Sun talk to the town council, but whether they'd reveal the ancestral graves, she couldn't say for sure. After Leroy saved his life on the plane, Halloran went to his house to express his gratitude to the righteous major. That's when Leroy finally spoke frankly. The truth is, he had already recognized that Halloran was one of the three masked men who attacked him that night. Halloran also confessed that was the case. That night he saw with his own eyes how Leroy had a gun pointed at his head, yet Leroy didn't show any fear, but instead focused on analyzing who his enemies were. For that reason, Halloran deeply admired Leroy's bravery. After a week of good behavior and showing no signs of abnormal conduct, Lily was cleared by the doctor to go home and resume her studies. However, Lily felt very guilty for giving a false statement, which led to Uncle Han's imprisonment. While Ronnie was being shunned by peers for being a butcher's son, to exonerate Uncle Han, Lily had to tell the truth about seeing those ghost-like entities. But if she did, no one would believe her. The friendly nurse then gave Lily an idea. Most people only believe in the things they can see with their own naked eyes. So the nurse advised Lily to find and record evidence. Then the truth would come out right away. Lily went to school to find Ronnie and apologize. Lily knew her friend was still very upset, so Lily promised to try and clear Uncle Han's name. But how? We'll take photos of those supernatural entities for evidence. Ronnie thought the idea made sense, but first they needed some backup. Looking through their misfit friends, Ronnie picked them. Since Win and Rick were already horny for girls, the two boys immediately agreed to join the group. Then the four of them headed up to the lookout to plan their move. Win wondered how they were going to find those spirits to photograph them. Well, we'll lure them out. But how do we do that? Suddenly, Vic remembered his uncle used to be a shaman. Back in the day when punishing someone for not paying up, the uncle would summon an evil spirit called Orisa to threaten the debtors. So did your uncle show you how to summon them? Or not? First, all four will run to the cemetery. Then light some candles in a circle and sit inside. Finally, recite the incantation. Abracadabra, hit that subscribe button, guys. Once the steps were finished, the four friends sat back to back to keep a better lookout. However, they waited and waited, but nothing appeared. Thinking Rick was just trolling them, Ronnie and Lily stormed off in anger. The two boys immediately chased after them to explain. They had no idea that a statue had begun to move. A nearby tombstone also suddenly cracked open. Strangely, the cemetery gate seemed to be getting further and further away. Suddenly, the ground cracked and collapsed, forcing the four of them to swerve and run in different directions. That's when the evil spirits appeared and started hunting them down one by one. Seeing one for the first time, Ronnie fell down a slope in terror. Lily was scared too, but she still tried to turn around and snap a photo. Unfortunately, her camera got snagged on a tree branch. Ronnie quickly ran over and grabbed the camera. He took a shot, but was startled by a jump scare ghost and dropped it. Rick accidentally ran into an evil spirit that looked just like his uncle. In a hurry, he rushed to pick up the camera. The evil spirits were hot on their heels. Trailing right behind him, Rick had to dive down the slope and hand the camera over to Win. Just as he was about to run, he suddenly spotted something lurking inside an ancient tomb. Curious, Win took the camera and approached to investigate. The other three luckily made it out of the graveyard. But why was Win taking so long? By now, he had already entered the ruins of the tomb. Where's Win? He was just right behind me. Run, guys, hurry. The four of them quickly sneaked into the school's lab and grabbed some chemical trays to prepare for developing the photos. They didn't expect the photography method to actually work. The evil spirits that Lily and Ronnie snapped at the cemetery all showed up clearly. The most terrifying thing was Win's photo. The thing he captured in the tomb was the clown itself. The morning after Pennywise, the four kids immediately rushed to the police station to meet with the police chief, Clinton Bowers. They handed him a file containing the photos they had taken the night before. Lily tried to explain that the culprit behind the massacre of the kids in the theater was actually a demon, and that they were chased through the cemetery. Luckily, we managed to capture what they look like. So, what the hell were you doing in the cemetery in the middle of the night? We were just taking a shortcut home. Seeing that the kids seemed sincere, Clinton Bowers began looking through the photos. The four friends thought they finally had the evidence to clear Uncle Han's name. Who would have thought that all they captured were tombstones covered in bird poop? The only one that caught Pennywise was Wynn's photo, but it was extremely blurry. As a result, the police chief dismissed it as just some stupid statue. This situation made Bowers furious. He warned Lily that if she brought in any more crazy evidence like that, he would personally throw her into a mental hospital. The others would be sent to reform school as a warning. Shaken, the four of them had to head back to school. Lily felt depressed because she couldn't exonerate Uncle Han. Wynn thought those spirits seemed more like Dracula. They can't be photographed and they don't have a reflection in the mirror. One confusing thing is why they could have killed us, but they chose not to. In the past, has any similar strange event ever happened in Derry before? My God. At our age, how could we possibly know that? Hearing that, Lily suddenly remembered Nurse Martha. She said that over 25 years ago, there were also children who went missing here in Derry. But since it was a time of poverty and hunger back then, no one thought it was a supernatural occurrence. People just thought the children, they probably ran away from home to find a better life. Or maybe just to stop being a burden to their families, that's all. When she read the article about the case where Uncle Han was suspected of being a child killer, Hanlon felt extremely uneasy, believing that this town wasn't exactly safe. Right then, Rose and her nephew arrived to deliver some furniture. After chatting for a bit, Hanlon learned that Rose was a local who had lived here for ages. So Hanlon brought up the case of the kids missing from the theater. She was worried that her son might end up like those other children. Hearing this, Rose replied that while Derry is a very beautiful town, sometimes strange things do happen here. Because of that, Rose advised Mrs. Hanlon it's best to keep a very close eye on Wynn. So that afternoon, Mrs. Hanlon took out the photos from the cemetery and demanded to know where Wynn had gone that night. He honestly admitted that he went to help Ronnie find evidence to clear Uncle Han's name, but halfway through, someone terrifying chased the four of them down. Recalling this, Wynn was still so terrified that he hugged his mom and burst into tears. Based on her son's story, Hanlon suspected that terrifying person might be the killer from the movie theater case. Right away, Hanlon went to the station to see Clinton Bowers. She said that if there is still someone lurking out there waiting for the chance to harm children, then there's a good chance Uncle Han is an innocent man. But the police chief countered, saying he had interrogated Han multiple times, and Han couldn't provide any proof that he wasn't at the scene. In that case, can I speak with him? I'm afraid not. You aren't a lawyer, nor are you family, so it's not allowed. Having run out of options, Hanlon headed to Han's house to meet his mother, Charlotte, to dig for more information. She introduced herself, saying that in the past, she used to be very active in social justice movements in the South, often helping other people of color who were victims of forced confessions. Hearing that, Charlotte finally spoke up, saying her son was very gentle. Since he was a boy, Han wouldn't even hurt a fly, let alone a child. Well, if he wasn't at the crime scene, then where was he, ma'am? Only God and my son know the answer to that, Ms. Hanlon, but neither of them is willing to talk. At this point, Hanlon understood the problem. She immediately went back to the police station to see Han and get to the bottom of it. This time, Hanlon brought a power of attorney from Charlotte to act as his representative. Despite that, the jailer still tried to give her a hard time, making her wait until the next morning. Losing her cool, Hanlon threatened the officer with the law. If you don't let me see Han right now, I'll take this straight to the Kennedy administration. And by tomorrow, I guarantee, there will be hundreds of protesters out here, railing against your blatant racism. Officer? Hanlon's fierce words made the officer turn pale. He had no choice but to let her into the cell block. As soon as she saw him, Hanlon got straight to the point. Where were you on the night of the murders? Even though Han knew she was there to help him, he still refused to reveal his whereabouts that night. This left Hanlon completely baffled. If Han didn't tell the truth, he'd be branded a child killer for good. If that happened, Ronnie would be shunned and discriminated against by his peers, and Han's elderly mother would have no one to care for her. Hearing this, Han's resolve crumbled. Seeing things had come to this, he finally had to come clean. It turns out that on the night of the crime, Han was with a married woman. The reason he hadn't disclosed this detail was because he feared it would ruin the woman's reputation forever. Even worse, her husband would surely kill her for her infidelity. So Han begged Hanlon, if you want to help me clear my name, please find a way to handle it perfectly, without involving that woman at all. That night at dinner, Leroy asked his son how he was liking his new school, but the boy just hesitated. Hanlon immediately broke the silence by saying Wynn already had a girlfriend named Ronnie. Too embarrassed, the boy simply asked to go up to his room. The next morning, Leroy took some time to go fishing with his son at a stream for some man-to-man, heart-to-heart. Leroy kept asking Wynn about Ronnie, making him grin from ear to ear. Meanwhile, Private Halloran, having successfully located was granted a warehouse as new quarters for him and his squad by General Sun. Though it was old and a total mess, it was still a great spot. Everyone just had to tidy up a bit to turn the warehouse into a fully equipped, comfortable home. While taking out the trash, Halloran suddenly had a massive headache and started seeing weird hallucinations. His late mother suddenly appeared in the woods and said, "You must be careful, keep that lid on tight, okay?" After speaking to Halloran, she vanished, back with the father and son. While Leroy was talking suddenly, Wynn hooked a fish. But since he was a rookie after a bit of a struggle, the fish got away. Coincidentally, they ran out of bait too. Leroy had to leave his son there, while he went back to the car for more bait. Standing all alone in the middle of the stream, the water was incredibly calm and still. Suddenly, Wynn spotted a carp swimming toward him, and then diving under. Finding it odd, he leaned down to investigate. Suddenly, a terrifying-looking Leroy reached out from the water and dragged Wynn down, scaring him senseless. He screamed out loud. Hearing the shout, the real Leroy immediately rushed back to save his kid. The evil entity threatened that Wynn would also burn in hell. Luckily, Leroy pulled his son up just in time. Even though the danger had passed, Wynn was still in a total state of panic. He claimed that the person who attacked him was his dad, a version of him covered in burns just like in that old photo. Leroy had once survived a plane crash during the war. Hearing this, Leroy's blood ran cold. He figured his son must have experienced a vision similar to what Halloran saw back on the plane. But the weird thing was, the boy still had bloody handprints on his arm from the attacker. Could this have been more than just a hallucination? It wasn't a dream, Dad. I'm telling you, there's something terrifying lurking here in Derry. All of a sudden, the two of them spotted a red balloon floating in the distance. That night, Wynn tossed and turned, unable to sleep because of what happened at the stream. Feeling restless, he went over to his telescope to clear his head by stargazing. While adjusting the lens, Wynn accidentally caught sight of Pennywise the clown standing down on the street. He let out a terrified scream. Hearing his cry, his parents rushed in to comfort him. Wynn told them, terrified, that someone was watching him. Furious Leroy ran outside to hunt down whoever was threatening his kid. "Who the hell are you? Show your face if you've got the guts. Come out and face me like a man." However, nobody appeared. Only a single red balloon remained snagged on a tree branch. Leroy immediately went to see Halloran to get some answers. Leroy wanted to know what Halloran had really seen on that plane, and what exactly General Sun had ordered him to find at all costs. What the hell was it really? Despite Leroy's aggressive interrogation, Halloran just claimed he didn't know. He insisted he was only following orders from his superiors. Halloran's evasiveness only made Leroy more frustrated. So he decided to seek out General Sun and ask him straight up, what exactly is this weapon that the military is digging for? General Sun didn't answer right away, but calmly took out a file. He discovered that during the excavation, a few young Native American men were caught spying from behind the fence. Consequently, General Sun ordered Colonel Fuller to bring in a man named Tanyan for interrogation, but the guy was tough as nails and wouldn't talk. Left with no choice, the general ordered Halloran to use his psychic abilities to extract the info. The questions Leroy had been wondering about, Tanyan was bound to have the real answers. Without skipping a beat, Halloran began to unleash his psychic power, invading Tanyan's mind. The young man slowly fell into a trance, convulsing in agony. He flashed back to when he was 9 years old. At that time, Tanyan's Aunt Rose mentioned a legend about a monster in the western forest. This was a story that the village elders required all the kids to memorize from the age of 7. That's how Tanyan knew the monster's name was Gallo. Rose reminded her nephew that some stories are for teaching lessons, but others are completely real. "Wait, you mean the monster Gallo is real?" "Exactly. So I want you to tell the story one more time to see if you still remember the ancestors' warnings." Tanyan then recounted that millions of years ago, even before the dawn of the first humans, an evil spirit named Galu was banished from the darkest void of the night sky. It was bound within a meteorite when it slammed into Earth. That meteorite shattered on impact, and the evil spirit was finally set free. It wandered the forests for millennia, until the first ancestors of mankind emerged. After ages of survival, they realized the star that carried the monster was actually its prison, and the stones born from that shooting star still held its power. Back then, the ancestors of the Native Americans managed to get a fragment of that meteorite. They then carved it into a dagger to fight back against the monster Gallo and protect their people. Over time, The legend of Gallo was passed down from one generation to the next. The Native Americans lived in peace with the monster, simply by staying out of its reach. They never went hunting in the western forest, because that was Gallo's territory. But then one day, American settlers arrived to claim the land. The Native Americans warned them about the dangers lurking in the western forest, but they were ignored. The settlers went into the western forest to hunt anyway, and before long they became the hunted targets of Gallo. By devouring the settlers, the creature grew stronger and more powerful than ever. Soon enough, the monster was able to hunt beyond the borders of the western forest. Realizing this was a direct threat to the tribe's survival, Seski, the tribe's great chief, called a meeting with the council. The chief argued that the ancestral dagger was no longer enough to protect all the villages at the same time if Gallo decided to attack. So the tribe decided to abandon their land and move elsewhere. However, the chief's daughter, Nakani, didn't want to leave her home behind. She believed there was another way. So, Nakani took the dagger and headed into the western forest with her friends. Their goal was to find the ancient cave where Gallo first landed to collect more of the sacred stones. The moment she realized her daughter had taken the dagger and gone into the western forest with her friends, Chief Seski was terrified. She immediately led an elite squad of soldiers to go after them and protect her daughter. In her rush, the chief forgot one crucial thing. Without that dagger by their side, none of them had any way to defend themselves against Gallo. Seizing that opportunity, the monster transformed itself into the things people feared most, to isolate the members of the elite squad one by one. Then Gallo hunted them down individually. Confronting the chief was a demon in the form of a priest. Even though she managed to hit the demon with several arrows, it didn't seem to wound him at all. It only made him more livid. Gallo then shifted into a truly horrific form and finished off the chief. Hearing her mother's scream, Nakani rushed to the scene. The demon knew the girl had the dagger, so he immediately hightailed it out of there. Nakani collapsed over her mother's body, sobbing in grief. But for the sake of her people's safety, Nakani had to pull herself together and suppress her sorrow. After burying the chief, Nakani took up the dagger and decided to head into the western forest once more. Thankfully, her determination paid off. Nakani and her friends finally found the cave. They shattered the ancient meteorite to gather more shards. Nakani then devised a plan to trap the monster and imprison it forever within the western forest. Following the plan, the villagers took the meteorite shards and buried them at specific points around the forest. There were 13 sacred stones, placed inside turtle shells and carefully buried deep in the earth. The people also lit fires at each stone's location to mark their spots. Immediately afterward, an invisible barrier formed around the western forest, trapping Gallo inside. The Native Americans swore an oath to guard the sacred stone pillars and keep their locations a secret. After hearing the whole story, Halloran immediately froze Aunt Rose. Then he hypnotized Tanyan to reveal the location of the pillars. In a trance, the young man opened the door and pointed toward a house nearby. He said that if we follow the tunnel under the ancient well, we will find the stone pillars. At this moment, the four kids are huddling up on the observation deck. They still have a puzzling question: why does it keep stalking and terrorizing them instead of killing them? After thinking for a while, Wynn makes a bold guess. He says that when humans are afraid, the adrenal glands secrete hormones like adrenaline and cortisol into the bloodstream. Maybe it really loves the taste of those hormones, which is why it stalks and scares us. Once it smells a high concentration of adrenaline and cortisol, it will eat us. Hearing this, everyone is absolutely terrified. Even though it's just a hunch of Wynn's, what if he's right? Just to be safe, Lily pulls out 4 sedatives. They might help prevent fear and anxiety. Later that day, the class has a biology lesson about parasitic worms. The teacher lectures that these worms often live as parasites on snails, causing their eyes to swell up and look extremely colorful. This attracts birds to swoop down and peck at those eyes. This lesson makes Match feel absolutely disgusted and scared. At lunch, Match and Lily are talking when a handsome guy named Flanagan comes over to say hi. Match says his vibe clearly shows he's crushing on Lily. Suddenly getting noticed by a hottie, Lily is so excited she's practically fangirling. Seeing this, Match suggests her friend should go over and say hi back. But Lily is shy and wants to go to the restroom to fix her makeup first. The girl has no idea that it's all a trap set by the mean kids. They and Match conspired to use that handsome guy to humiliate Lily in front of the whole school. But when Match enters the restroom, felt a pang of guilt and a crisis of conscience. After all, in the past, she and Lily had been best friends. So Match decided to tell Lily about the dirty plan that the mean girls' clique had cooked up. However, before Match could even open her mouth, a sudden burning pain hit her eyes. Then they began to bulge out, looking exactly like that snail from earlier. The agony was unbearable and Match's vision blurred. She tried to run into the lab to find something to pry the parasitic worm out of her eyes. Hearing her friend's tragic screams, Lily took out a sedative to take, but accidentally dropped it into the toilet. Fearing this nightmare was linked to it, Lily sucked it up and reached into the water to retrieve the pill. She then bolted over to where Match was. Match was pressing her head against a saw to cut off her bulging eyes. Of mine, Lily rushed in, pulled her away, and snatched the blade. Just then the entire student body burst in. Seeing the scene, everyone assumed Lily was the one who had gouged out Match's eye. However, Match was reasonable. She explained that she had clumsily tripped and fallen, hitting her face on the table edge and shattering her glasses, and that Lily had only run over to help. Though the immediate danger had passed, Match was still terrified. She didn't understand why it was targeting her. "I don't know why either," Lily said, "but if it happens again, I'll be right there by your side to face it together." That thing kept appearing and vanishing in such a creepy way, giving the group of friends a real headache. While the four were on the observation deck brainstorming a plan, they suddenly spotted a tent. Hearing a noise, they immediately grabbed weapons for self-defense. To their shock, the person who poked their head out was Maddie. Seeing that he was still alive, everyone was absolutely stunned. They had no idea where their friend had been all this time. Maddie told them that he had been dragged by Pennywise the clown into the sewer system beneath the town. Apparently, the demon had left a few people alive, as if he wanted to feast on their fear. "So how did you manage to escape?" "Because Pennywise has a specific habit. He feeds at night, but during the day he's out like a light. I took that chance to escape and ran like hell." "What about Teddy, Sushi, and Finn?" "The demon ate Teddy's brain, and Suzuki had her limbs torn apart. She was bleeding out and screaming, in agony until she died. Only Finn is still down there. However, he's so exhausted he can't even move or speak a word. In that case, we have to hurry and tell the police so they can save Finn. We can't. If I show my face, my dad will take me back and torture me. He's brutal, you guys. I'd honestly rather go back into the sewers than go back home." Hearing Maddie say that, Lily finds herself in a tough spot. She goes to Nurse Mata to ask for advice. Lily's idea is to go with her group of friends to find and rescue Finn themselves. However, Mata warns her not to do anything reckless. "That's very dangerous. Why don't you just report it to the police?" "We can't, ma'am, because we promised Maddie that we wouldn't let him be seen." As they're talking, Mata's alcoholic husband walks in. He tells the nurse to get in the kitchen and prep some snacks for his drinks, or she'll get a slap across the face. Because Halloran invaded his memories, Tanyan went into shock, vomiting and foaming at the mouth. This time Halloran successfully retrieved a piece of vital information. Hearing this, Leroy is dying to know what that information is. General Exo then explains that 400 years ago, Native Americans buried shards of a meteor at 13 different locations, known as the Sacred Pillars. Called the Sacred Pillar, the purpose was to create a prison cage surrounding the territory of the entity known as It. The range is roughly along the borders of the town of Derry. "So you're saying Derry is basically a prison, and we're looking for those 13 bars?" "Exactly, Major. That young man, Tanyan, is one of those tasked with keeping the Sacred Pillars hidden. However, thanks to Halloran's mind-reading abilities, the military now knows the exact location of the 13 Sacred Pillars. They are currently scattered beneath the sewer system of Derry. And to get down there, one must go through the well at house number 29 on Nebolt Street. So what's the point of taking the Sacred Pillars? To shrink the cage and bring it under control, sir. If we succeed, we will use it as a weapon to win the Cold War against the Soviet Union. After General So spills everything, Leroy is extremely worried about his family, since Derry is its hunting ground. So General So advises him to take his family to the base. It'll be much safer there. Even though Leroy is a bit frustrated, because from the start, General Exo hadn't been clear that this mission involved a demonic entity. Nonetheless, for the sake of his family's safety, Leroy has to rush home to move his wife and kids to the base for a while. A moment later, Aunt Rose finds General So with a look of pure rage. She demands to know why he's detaining her nephew Tanyan. Owing Aunt Rose for saving his life once in the past, General So promises that he won't harm Tanyan. His only goal is to have the young man lead them to the Sacred Pillars. Once he has them, he will control the entity It to deter hostile nations and keep this country safe. Oh my God, that is a completely insane idea. You really think you can control It? That entity is incredibly powerful. It can't be controlled. Francis, despite what Aunt Rose said, General Exo still wouldn't listen. He was hell-bent on giving it a shot. With no other choice, Aunt Rose had to go back home. She opened the safe and took out the sacred blade left by her ancestors. Then she asked for permission to enter the holding cell to see Tanyan. He apologized to her for revealing the secret of the Sacred Pillars. Aunt Rose knew her nephew had been hit with mind reading, so she didn't blame him. Since Tanyan would be the guide, Aunt Rose handed him the sacred blade. "Remember, you must keep this on you at all times. to stay safe. The next morning, Colonel Full immediately dispatched a special ops team to 29 Neibolt Street. The goal was to find the 13 artifacts that the Native Americans called the Sacred Pillars. They were buried in various areas around Derry. It was known that this house was built over an old well from colonial times, so everyone had to climb down the well to enter Derry's sewer system. Tanyan would lead them to the locations of the Sacred Pillars. The Major, Leroy, and his team would secure the house, while Private Halloran would provide support whenever his psychic abilities were needed. Previously, General XO had warned them that when entering enemy territory, no matter what form the enemy takes, it will use your individual fears against you. The advice was, don't freeze up and don't believe it. If you see anything supernatural down in those sewers, just light it up. Remembering Aunt Rose's warning, Tanyan kept the sacred blade on him at all times. Meanwhile, the group of friends was so anxious that they ignored the nurse's advice and decided to go save Finn on their own. Maddie had escaped Pennywise's lair once, so he would be their guide. Since Wynne had guessed that it feeds on fear, Lily prepared a box of sedatives. Everyone took 3 pills to suppress the fear inside them. Right after that, the group followed Maddie into a sewer line at the edge of the forest. This way, Halloran suddenly heard someone calling his name. He stepped forward and abruptly fell into a deep pool of water, even though it looked very shallow from above. His teammates searched but couldn't find Halloran anywhere. Suddenly there was the sound of heavy boots echoing in the sewer. Since they each took 3 sedatives at once, the whole group now felt completely spaced out, like they were high as a kite. The underground sewer system down here was a total maze, causing everyone to get separated. While Colonel Full wasn't paying attention, Tanyan seized the chance to bolt. In his haste, the young man dropped the sacred blade, but he had to keep running to escape the colonel's gunfire. Hearing the shots, Leroy and Russo thought their comrades had run into the enemy. Suddenly, the two of them felt the air down here get sweltering and oppressive. Worried about the status of the other team members, Russo was extremely restless and anxious. Suddenly, someone came running toward them, pleading for help. It turned out to be Hanlon. She said she was terrified and just wanted to go home. Strangely only, Leroy saw his wife while Russo couldn't see a thing. Suddenly, lights flickered wildly, leaving them both panicked. Hanlon lunged at them in a demonic form, forcing Leroy to take her down. Russo was left stunned, not understanding what his partner was shooting at. The demon let out a cackle and slipped away beneath the water. Leroy turned and gave Russo a stern warning. Whatever you see down here, even if it's an ex-girlfriend or your high school gym teacher, kill it on sight. Understand? Got it, I got it. Meanwhile, the friends followed Maddie's lead to a dead end. Suddenly, the bodies of the missing children unexpectedly surfaced from the water. Inside, they even found the bodies of Maddie and Finn. So then who was the one who led them here? While everyone was still in shock, the Maddie imposter began to sing a nursery rhyme. All the tunnels run deep underground, where not a single child will ever be found. They wandered away to join the show, but lost their way in the world below. They took their pills and their fears took flight, but what they seek is nowhere in sight. They joined the circus and left the town. Now they live here with the clown, so duck down low and hide, little ones. While running away, Lily unfortunately tripped and fell. She scrambled to her feet, but got separated from her friends and ran into another dead end. The clown slowly approached her, taking the form of her father. With nowhere left to run, Lily could only stand and pray. The clown began transforming into a demon and plunged at Lily with a mouthful of razor-sharp teeth. Suddenly, Pennywise stopped. It turns out the sacred blade dropped there had accidentally warded him off. The demon couldn't touch Lily, so he had no choice but to retreat in frustration. Seeing this, the girl slowly picked up the knife. When running out this way, happened to run into Leroy. Leroy assumed this was another demon, impersonating someone just like with his wife earlier, so he raised his gun ready to fire. However, this time Russo could see the boy too, which meant Wynne and his friends were real and not a hallucination. Just as Leroy pulled the trigger, Russo dove in and used his body to take the bullet, saving the boy. Only then did Leroy realize this was real life. He immediately told the kids to hurry up and get out first, while he stayed behind to give his teammate first aid. But unfortunately, the shot had hit him right in the heart. Knowing he wouldn't make it, Russo struggled to tell Leroy not to blame himself. And don't let my death be in vain. Okay, brother. Back to Halloran's situation. While struggling, he saw a hole of light. Halloran immediately followed it to the surface, only to find himself in a bathtub. His grandmother stood right in front of him and asked, "Is he coming for you again?" The question left Halloran feeling confused. Suddenly, Halloran's grandfather walked in. He was carrying a metal box and said, "Are you two using your minds to talk to each other so I can't hear you? I might not have that gift, but I'm not stupid. I know everything this old hag is telling you. Don't listen to him. He's getting inside your head, Halloran. This power is meant to be used. Lock those things away in a little box in your mind, then throw away the key. Don't listen to him. He's going to hurt you, sweetie. How did you find my box? My God, it's right there in the core of your soul. No matter where you bury it, I'll find it. Halloran, don't let him open that box. Hey, kid, be a good boy and open the box for me. No, I'm not opening anything. Fine, if you want to be stubborn, I'll shoot this blind woman. Will you open it now? I'm counting to 3, kid. 1. No, don't 2. What the hell are you 3? After the vision ended, a shaken Halloran walked out of the sewer alone. Who knows what was in that box that left him so shell-shocked? Suddenly, Halloran spotted someone up ahead. Surprisingly, it was Captain Russo. Meanwhile, Leroy had returned to base and reported everything to General Shaw. He knew that Pennywise could shift into countless forms, so General Shaw believed Russo's death was just a tragic accident during the mission. Since Han refused to talk, and no one could prove his innocence, the police were transferring him to the most notorious prison in the U.S. Rumor has it that there, even the toughest guy in history could only last a week. The townspeople were absolutely livid with Han, because they assumed he was the killer who murdered those kids. Out of nowhere, Hanlon saw a guy standing inside the station, grinning in a creepy, demonic way. In the blink of an eye, he was gone. Suddenly, an angry local rushed over with a gun, hell-bent on shooting Han for revenge. But the cops managed to stop him just in time. Then they quickly bundled Han into a transport van. On the way to prison, the transport van suddenly crashed. Many inmates were either killed or injured, but Han luckily managed to escape. Just as a nurse was heading to work, she suddenly found Han lying on the back seat. He told Martha, "Don't say a word, just drive into the woods where it's safe." As it turns out, the lover who could prove Han's innocence was this very nurse. Han said that something had attacked the prison van, but it was moving too fast for him to see. To make matters worse, the authorities thought Han was the culprit. Charges were stacking up against him. Right now, the police are conducting a massive manhunt and have locked down all exits from the town. Cornered and desperate, Han had no idea where to hide. Suddenly, he remembered someone who could help and told Martha immediately. Immediately, she went to the military base to find Hanlon's sister. Since Han was now a wanted fugitive, people were hunting him down everywhere. So, Hanlon's sister had to arrange for Han to temporarily hide in the warehouse with Halloran's squad. After returning from the sewers, he was still visibly shaken. But when his teammate is asked, he couldn't give them an answer, as it was a top-secret mission. Meanwhile, Lily accidentally discovered that Pennywise is terrified of the sacred dagger. When it glows, that demonic clown suddenly retreats and vanishes. The group also noticed some carvings on the blade, hieroglyphs that look like ancient Egyptian script. Even though they didn't know what it meant, Lily still made a suggestion. If this dagger can scare it, then we can use it to go back into the sewers to take down that evil clown. This idea is honestly way too dangerous, so Johnny immediately pushed back hard. She criticized Lily for being the one who egged them on, dragging the whole group underground where they were nearly ripped apart by Pennywise. Now you want us to go back there again? Are you out of your mind, Lily? Why are you being so harsh? It was because Mati said he was still alive, so I asked you guys to come help save our friend. Who would have guessed that Mati was actually Pennywise in disguise? How was I supposed to know? Oh, please, cut the excuses. If you hadn't dragged them to that movie theater that night, they'd probably still be alive right now. And the police wouldn't be hunting my dad down like some kind of animal. They should have never let you out of the psych ward. Lily, what the hell are you saying? Furious, Lily almost lunged at her with the dagger, but the others managed to hold her back. Wait, stop fighting, guys. This could be its plan to divide us. It's clouding your minds, making you blind with hate for each other. Even though Rick tried to play peacemaker, Ronnie still stormed off in a huff. Wynn immediately ran after her to comfort his girlfriend. It seems the kid really has a thing for Ronnie. Meanwhile, a devastated Lily went to Martha the nurse's house to talk things out. She knocked repeatedly but got no answer, so Lily took the liberty of stepping inside. She accidentally discovered an album left on the table. Driven by curiosity, Lily opened it. The first few pages were full of 15th anniversary photos and portraits of Martha's family. It seemed sweet, so Lily flipped to the next page. These were photos taken during a visit to the farm back in 1908. In one photo, a man was standing next to his daughter, and he looked strangely familiar to Lily. Why did his face look so much like Pennywise the clown? As Lily was focusing intently on the photos, Martha suddenly walked up, giving Lily a real fright. Overcome with emotion, she told her how they nearly died. Sewers, and because of that, they were now blaming her and giving her the cold shoulder. In reality, Lily just wanted to save her friend. She never expected to be lured by a demon. Overcome with grief, Lily tightly hugged the nurse. As she sobbed, Lily accidentally spotted a photo of Pennywise. The man's face was a dead ringer for the person in the album. Terrified, Lily immediately recoiled, her face pale with shock. Martha instantly realized that Lily had encountered the clown. Strangely, she seemed overjoyed, rather than frightened. "Oh, my dear, you did it. I know you don't understand. But you were the one who brought him back." These words left Lily completely bewildered. Suddenly, the girl saw a clown wig and costume. As it turns out, the photo Wynne took of it in the tomb was actually Martha, in disguise. "So that means you've been following us these past few days?" "Yes, that's right. Because I thought Pennywise might show up at the cemetery that night. I just really wanted to see him." "But why on earth would you want to see him?" "Let me tell you a story, then you'll understand. A long time ago, my father was a performer at the fair. He called himself Pennywise the dancing clown. I admired and loved him so much. But then he suddenly vanished. The fair eventually moved on, but I stayed behind in Derry to find him. By 1935, Martha started working as a nurse at Juniper Hill Asylum. Back then, there was a little girl named Mabel, who told the doctor she'd met a clown there. He wants to take me to see his fair. There's no clown here, sweetie. Clowns live at the circus, but he's real doctor. His voice comes right out of the pipes. He even told me to come down to the basement tonight." Hearing that, the doctor just brushed it off and left. Only Martha actually paid attention to what Mabel said. So that night, the nurse snuck into the room and told the girl she'd give her candy if she'd lead her to the clown. Upon hearing that, Mabel obediently followed Martha down to the basement. Suddenly, they both spotted a red balloon floating in the air. Suddenly, the clown reached out and grabbed the balloon. Mabel was terrified and about to bolt, but the nurse held her back and reassured the little girl that it was okay. The clown slowly approached and gave Mabel the balloon. Reuniting with family after years apart, the nurse cried out emotionally, "Daddy, I'm your little Martha from back then." Despite hearing her, the clown didn't care and bared his razor-sharp teeth. Terrified, both of them fled, but Mabel unfortunately tripped and fell. Just as Martha made it out, the door slammed shut and the bolt locked. Pennywise charged toward the girl with a twisted, terrifying stride. Martha quickly knelt down, desperately trying to pull Mabel out, but she was powerless. Finally, the little girl was devoured by the clown. Only a pool of blood remained, making Martha shiver. Right after her father stood up, leaving her stunned. "Pumpkin, it's me, your daddy. Don't be afraid. Daddy can explain everything. Just open the door and let Daddy in." Blinded by how much she missed him, Martha did as she was told. Trusting her blood-bound intuition, the nurse knew it was truly her father. Even if his appearance was a bit freakish, it was definitely him. The next day, the balloon appeared again, and her father vanished once more. Because of this, the nurse deduced that maybe her father was being held captive somewhere. So Martha will do whatever it takes to help him escape, just to see him one more time. Hearing firsthand that the nurse was actually the daughter of the demon, Lily was absolutely terrified. "Please don't hurt me." "Of course not, dear. Don't be afraid. I won't let anyone touch you." "But what about my friends?" "They're different. They're just the bait so I can see my father." "Wouldn't you also do anything to see your own father? Or would you—" No. "My dad is dead." "Oh my goodness, sweetheart. In this town of Derry, no one ever truly dies. Come with me, I'll show you something." Thinking that Martha wanted to kidnap her, Lily panicked. She slashed the nurse's arm with a holy knife and bolted. Meanwhile, Leroy had returned home and was chewing out his son. It was because Wynne suddenly appeared in the sewers that he accidentally shot and killed his best comrade. It was all because of that demonic entity, it, which could change into extremely terrifying and horrific shapes. Therefore, for the sake of safety, Leroy decided to ground Wynne, forbidding him from leaving his room, without Leroy's explicit permission. He was forced to stay in the military-based dormitory, and was not allowed to set foot in the town of Derry. However, Wynne was quite stubborn himself. He argued that he had faced it multiple times, and knew how to protect himself. Moreover, there were friends out there who needed Wynne's help, so he talked back and disobeyed his father. Infuriated, Leroy gave his defiant son a painful slap across the face. Wynne had no choice but to walk out. Hanlon didn't understand what this it thing was that was causing such a rift in the family. No matter what it was, Leroy's act of hitting his child, like that was just wrong. Feeling upset, Mrs. Hanlon decided to take Wynne and Ronnie to Halloran's barn. Ronnie was overjoyed to be reunited with Grandpa Han there. Afterward, Hanlon went back home to pack her bags. Since she couldn't condone Leroy's violent behavior toward their son, she decided to take her son back to their old place in the town of Silverbird. Seeing his wife was dead serious, Leroy finally explained that it was all because of it. It was the thing that killed Suso and pushed Leroy into such a frantic state of mind that he lost control of himself. Hearing this made Hanlon even more resentful. "If this town has an it thing that is as horrible as you say, then why the hell did you bring us here, huh? Good God, at first, I didn't even know the entity it was here." Everything was part of a military secret established by General Show. Even though Leroy explained it that way, Hanlon still didn't buy it and walked away. Feeling downcast, Leroy had no choice but to go to Halloran to ask about it. Leroy was curious about that time in the sewers, when there was a stretch of time where Halloran went missing for several hours. He didn't know what Halloran had run into. Halloran candidly told him that his psychic abilities made him see spiritual things. Like right now, he said, I see the ghost of a soldier, loitering around here, with his face completely mangled. My grandmother had that gift too, but she wasn't as strong as I am. When I first realized I had this power, it gave me constant insomnia. My grandmother taught me a little trick. She told me to imagine a massive old box, then put everything I didn't want to see anymore into that box. Finally close the lid and lock it up. And I did exactly what she said. I took all those deathly images and threw them into the box in my mind, then slammed the lid shut. I was only 9 years old back then. From that point on, I didn't see the deathly things anymore. But when we were in the sewers, something got into my head and ripped the lid wide open. So all those deathly things escaped and started mocking me. So you're saying they're hanging around here right now? That's right. My grandmother used to tell me that spirits always return to where they died. Do they ever talk to you? No, because I ignore them. So they don't realize that I'm here. But if I were to open my mouth and engage with them, those supernatural voices would definitely never stop. They know a lot of things we don't. Specifically things we the living aren't supposed to know. Then why don't you ask them? How to find the sacred pillars. Once the mission is complete, you can just lock them back in the box. So what if I can't lock them away anymore? You don't care, do you? You just want to finish the mission so General Show can give you a promotion, isn't that it? Now get the hell out of my room. Leroy was livid hearing that. Actually, he wanted to find the sacred pillars, to keep it in check, preventing it from harming his wife and kid. But this soldier was being stubborn and refused to cooperate. Full of rage, Leroy immediately threatened Halloran, saying that as a soldier, he must obey and follow every order given by his superiors. If you defy me, you'll be hauled off to military court in handcuffs. Think it over carefully, Private Halloran. After the others left, only Match and Rick stayed behind to talk. Seeing the girl having a hard time, changing the bandage on her eye, Rick helped her take it off. Even though the wound was a bit gnarly, this little guy didn't flinch. He even complimented her, saying she looked badass. This sweet gesture made Match start to have feelings for Rick. The next day at noon, while they were eating at the school cafeteria, the group of mean girls came looking for Match again. They told her to stop hanging out with those freaky and useless losers. They said it was beneath her. Hearing those girls trash talk, Rick right there in public, Match angrily took off her bandage, revealing the gross wound, scaring the absolute shit out of those mean girls. In class, Lily was still haunted by the clown. He had once said she was a good friend, but also a shitty daughter. Right then, the teacher told the class to take out their books. Encountering the demon, Lily frantically grabbed the holy knife to defend herself. But the rest of the class saw absolutely nothing. Now that your friends have ditched you, let's see who's gonna help you now, you nut job. Lily panicked, slammed her desk shut, and bolted from the room. Meanwhile, the three friends ran to the barn to find Ronnie. They wanted to convince Ronnie to make up with Lily and continue to join forces against it, but Ronnie refused, because she didn't want to abandon her father, Han, until he is finally proven innocent. The girl isn't going anywhere. Believe it or not, this warehouse has now turned into a club for partying and hooking up. Seeing Wynn's caring and attentive gestures toward his daughter, Han immediately caught on to the relationship between the two. Knowing it was unlikely his name would be cleared, and while the town's vigilantes were hunting him down everywhere, Han felt forced to talk about the worst-case scenario. He said that if anything bad happened to him, he hoped Wynn would step up to protect and care for his daughter. By saying that, it meant he had already accepted this future son-in-law. Well, do you even have to ask, kid? Meanwhile, the vigilantes had been hunting Han for days with no results. Sheriff Bowers had been fired by the mayor for negligence after letting a dangerous prisoner escape. Utterly bitter, he went to the vigilantes to incite them, insisting they must take Han down at any cost. These vigilantes were also seething with rage at Han for his crimes against children, so they all listened to Bowers' instigation. Just then, this dirty ex-cop got a tip that Han was at an abandoned military warehouse. Immediately, Bowers led the mob of vigilantes there. They all stepped out of their vehicles, wearing masks and packing heat. They were clearly looking to turn the place into a bloodbath. The people inside were still dancing and partying, totally oblivious. Everyone was just vibing to the loud music. The ghost nurse also began putting on a costume, transforming into Pennywise the clown. Bowers, the dirty cop, and the vigilantes stormed the warehouse, to everyone's absolute shock. Their intention wasn't just to make a scene. They know Han is hiding here, so all you need to do is hand over the wanted criminal, and they'll be on their way. Hearing this, Halloran stood up to address the vigilantes. I think you guys must have received the wrong information. The criminal Han is definitely not here. This place is just a hangout spot For military personnel, nothing more. If that's the case, then will you let us check? Hell no, of course not. What right do you punks have to demand an inspection? The right that comes with us packing heat. Is that good enough for you? Seeing the situation turn critical, and fearing others would get dragged into it, Han had to reveal himself and surrender to the vigilantes. However, Halloran's squad mates refused to back down. They immediately pulled their guns to face off against the mob. You guys have guns? Well, so do we. And more importantly, ours are government-issued. Yours definitely aren't. So go ahead, make a move. Faced with this standoff, despite his blood boiling with rage, Bowers had to suppress his anger and told the vigilantes to retreat outside. Everyone thought that was the end of it, but out of nowhere, the vigilantes outside deliberately locked all the doors, trapping everyone inside. Then they started throwing Molotov cocktails in, intending to burn everyone alive. Anyone who tried to crawl out through the windows was gunned down instantly. In just moments, the entire warehouse was engulfed in smoke and flames. Panic set in as everyone scrambled for an escape. In the chaos, Ronnie got separated from her father, Han. Right then, Pennywise, the clown, slowly appeared. He reached out his hand, promising to lead the girl to safety. But in a gruesome twist, the girl was devoured by the clown right then and there. Ronnie panicked and he immediately bolted. All of a sudden, Halloran saw spirits lingering around the area. In a life-or-death moment, he had no choice but to communicate, with the spirits asking them to show him the escape route under these floorboards. To his surprise, the one guiding Halloran was an indigenous chief who died hundreds of years ago, Bezeski. But Pennywise just laughed triumphantly. Because Halloran had communed with the spirits, all the other ghosts could now see him too. In a rush, Halloran told Mr. Han and the kids to quickly escape through the crawl space. Once they got outside, they quickly took cover in a thicket of bushes. Match and Rick tried to run toward Halloran, but unfortunately a falling beam blocked their path. Seeing the house engulfed in raging flames, the vigilantes assumed that all the black people inside were dead, so they gleefully left the scene to avoid being held accountable. However, Stan's car suddenly stalled out on him. Right at that moment, the nurse appeared in the female clown outfit. Even with the makeup on, Stan still recognized her as his wife. He was furious and started cursing at Martha, telling her to take off that freakish costume, or she'd be catching hands for dinner once they got home. Oh my God, this is just my hobby, honey. Honey my ass, you piece of work. You dare talk back to me! Suddenly, Pennywise appeared with a knife, making Martha overjoyed to see her father again. Without a word, the clown coldly slashed Stan to death and devoured him with relish. It turned out Martha was the mastermind behind everything. She was the one who secretly tipped off Bowers that Mr. Han was at the warehouse. Her goal was to have the white vigilantes and the black community get into a bloody brawl. And wherever there's violence, Pennywise the clown is sure to show up. Finally, Martha was able to see her father once again. The reason she loved dressing up as a female clown actually goes back to her childhood. It was 1908 back then. Pennywise the clown appeared on the bright stage of the fairgrounds. He danced around with his lanky strides, holding a bunch of red balloons. Then, he skipped around acting out a scene of picking flowers and catching butterflies. Among the colorful props, he hunched over and spun in circles, struggling to pluck at the flower stems to no avail. The children in the audience burst into laughter at the funny performance, and the clown's exaggerated hilarious movements. But then the lights dimmed. Pennywise slowly walked toward a bed and picked up an old dress, all that remained of his late wife. He clutched it to his chest, his shoulders trembling. The laughter died down, replaced by the clown quietly spinning on stage. His distorted dance, heavy with grief, turned the atmosphere dead silent. From a distance, someone was watching the clown intently. It was Martha. Standing in the wings, she deeply admired her father's performance. So she dressed up as the female clown Periwinkle, longing to perform on stage with her dad. Hearing the name Periwinkle, his wife's stage name, Pennywise felt a wave of sadness and stood there in deep thought, drinking to drown his sorrows. Suddenly a boy emerged from the dark woods. This was the mysterious figure who had been watching Pennywise perform from afar earlier that morning. The boy said in a stern voice, "I see that the children seem to be drawn to you. You're a little young to be talking so trashy, kid." Immediately the boy softened his tone. "I've lost my parents. Please, mister, help me find them." "No can do. I'm busy." Suddenly a strange noise came from the bushes. Thinking it was the child's parents, Pennywise immediately led the boy into the woods to look. Pennywise has been missing ever since. Those in the carnival troupe only found her father's blood-stained handkerchief, so everyone speculated that Pennywise might have been eaten by wolves. Hearing this, Martha was devastated. It wasn't until now that she saw him once again. However, before Martha could even celebrate, Pennywise said that he wanted to go to sleep. No, don't leave me again, Dad." "Don't worry, Daddy will be back." Despite Pennywise's words, Martha still tried to grab his hand. Suddenly, she noticed a terrifying, sinister look. This couldn't possibly be her father. "Who are you?" "What have you done to my father?" With his cover blown, Pennywise didn't need to play pretend anymore. He told her that he had devoured Martha's father. It turned out that boy from back then was it in disguise. He wanted to use the clown's identity to easily lure in children. Pennywise even said that her father's soul was trapped inside of him. "Come to daddy, daughter." No, stay away from me." Suddenly, Pennywise opened his massive maw and emitted an intense beam of light, placing Martha into a trance. At this point, the fire had flared up violently. Match and Rick luckily spotted a steel chest, but there was only enough room inside for one person to hide. Therefore, Rick gave this chance of survival to Match and held the lid down tight. The boy told her he had been in love with her for a long time, and this was the ultimate gesture of a boyfriend, sacrificing his life to protect his girl. Hearing this, Match was deeply moved. Actually, she loved Rick too. She tried to get out to give the chance of living to Rick, but it was no use. In Rick's eyes, Match was the most beautiful girl in the world, and those were the boy's final words. So tragic. Hours later, the fire department finally put out the blaze, but Rick was brave enough to sacrifice himself for his love. Match was also rescued from the chest by a firefighter. Seeing her boyfriend lying there, her heart was torn to pieces. Then the boy's body was covered with a sheet and carried out. As for the nurse, she wasn't eaten by it, but she looked like she had lost her soul. After such a horrific night, the children were still terrified. Yet there was one girl laughing in a very strange way. At that moment, Leroy and his wife rushed to the scene and were overjoyed to see that Wynn was safe. It was all thanks to Halloran's efforts, because he had communicated with the spirits. They were now clinging to him and constantly whispering in his ear. Among them were even those who had just died last night. They wanted Halloran to bring this to light and demand justice. Colonel Fuller thought it was still out there, so it would be best to take Halloran back to the military base for safety. However, Halloran insisted that it had gone to sleep, since he could always sense its spiritual power before, but now it seemed to have faded away. Halloran also confidently said that he could find one of those celestial pillars. How exactly? It was thanks to the guidance of Chief Seski. When no one was looking, the children quickly led Hanlon to meet up with Han to help him stay under the radar. Hanlon then took Han's clothes and made it look like he was burned at the scene. As a result, the police thought Han was dead, so they immediately closed his file and ended the case. Leroy suggested to his wife that for the time being, they should hide Han in a house in Derry and have him wear a military uniform as a disguise. Waiting for the right moment, he would find a way to help Han get out of here. At the same time, Rose and the indigenous people on the council also sensed that its feeding cycle had ended. Now it has likely gone into hibernation. Based on the statistics provided by General So, Aunt Rose learned that the warehouse fire claimed the lives of 23 people. Up to this point, 17 young souls have perished throughout its entire cycle. These numbers weigh heavily on everyone's hearts, as they couldn't save anyone. All they can do now is try to maintain the barrier, keeping it trapped in a cage, and preventing it from escaping the Derry area. They must wait 27 years before they can meet again to figure out how to deal with it. Meanwhile, Ronnie and Match are rushing over to Lily's house to break the news about the warehouse fire. Lily says she also heard the news about the incident on the radio. However, what she didn't expect was that Rick had died so tragically. A kind-hearted and likable friend, gone forever just like that it leaves. Everyone feeling heartbroken and pained. Going up to the observatory to collect the toys, seeing Rick's favorite airplane, Matt gets even more emotional and bursts into tears. Wynn also wants to reunite with his friends, but his mom has grounded him. She says that even though it is hibernating, the real monsters are actually the people of this town. They were the ones who started the fire and caused so many deaths, so you'd better stay put inside this house for me. Meanwhile, General So has deployed military forces to begin digging at the exact location Chief Seski pointed out to Halloran. For the past 2 days, he's been constantly hounded by restless spirits, leaving his mind in a total mess. Just then, the soldiers dug up a tortoise shell. They immediately pried it open and found that the celestial pillar was indeed inside. Colonel Fuller then ordered the soldiers to place the celestial pillar into a wooden crate, preparing to transport it back to the base. From a distance, Tanyan watched everything unfold, while Leroy looked puzzled. Why aren't you bringing the celestial pillar into the town of Derry to restrict its movements? Instead, you're taking it back to the base. What you're doing is like intentionally leaving the cage door wide open. Why is that, Colonel? I don't get it. You heard what Halloran said. It is hibernating. Taking advantage of that, General So wants to bring the pillar back to research it and analyze its properties. Once that's done, the military will be able to use that data to track down the remaining 12 celestial pillars. So just relax, Leroy. Don't be so impatient. After saying that, Fuller immediately rushed to transport the pillar to the base. Afterward, they quickly tossed it into a steel furnace to melt it down and destroy it. Just at that moment, Leroy ran in with a gun and demanded that the disposal team get the celestial pillar out of there right now. Seeing someone causing a scene, Colonel Fuller was absolutely livid and was about to have his soldiers gun Leroy down. With the situation turning critical, General So had to call Leroy into his office for a talk. He apologized for not letting him in on it sooner. Wait, what? Don't tell me your goal in finding the pillar wasn't to weaponize it against the Soviet Union. The truth is the biggest threat to this nation doesn't come from the outside. It's from within. Leroy, do you see what's going on out there? Americans are at each other's throats, and things are getting worse with race riots popping up everywhere. On top of that, you've got these anti-nuclear fanatics protesting like crazy. That's why I've stepped in, trying to put a lid on these internal conflicts. Because Americans have stopped listening to each other. All they care about is fighting for the biggest piece of the pie. Meanwhile, the rest of the world is eating us alive. The only thing that'll make people listen is fear. Listen. I think you mean obey, not listen. Exactly. A nation ruled by law needs a system that people actually fall in line with. So you never intended to lock it up. You just wanted to let it loose. That's right. You saw the brawl at the warehouse. It was gruesome. Yet the streets are quiet today. Why? Because of fear. It hangs over everyone like a thick fog. But if you let it out, then all of America will become a dark dairy. How many children will have to die then? General, even so, it'll be fewer than those killed in car accidents every year. As soldiers, we have to accept a little collateral damage, Leroy. No way. I'm reporting your crazy actions to headquarters. Hearing that, General So lost his temper and ordered the men to continue destroying the pillar. Left with no choice, Leroy drew his gun and aimed it directly at General So, demanding he stop. But Colonel Fuller, standing behind him, quickly raised his own weapon and ordered Leroy to drop his gun. General So added that Leroy's actions today might have just saved this country. You wanted to be a hero? Well, you did it. Now get back to the barracks and wait for my orders. However, as soon as Leroy left, General So immediately told Fuller not to let Leroy leave the base alive. Finally, the celestial pillar was dropped into the steel furnace. The moment it melted, Pennywise instantly woke up. At the same time, Hanlon and Han went to Aunt Rose to ask for help. Hanlon's goal was to have Aunt Rose find a way to get Han across the dairy border. Once they reached another territory, Hanlon's friend would handle the paperwork and new identities so Han could live in peace. While everyone was talking, Tanyan ran back to report the news about the celestial pillar. During that time, Wynn suddenly heard the phone ringing. On the other end of the line, it was Ronnie's voice talking about Rick's death. His lungs must have popped just like popcorn, making my mouth water just thinking about it. Huh, what are you talking about? I can smell his stinking, tiny, crushed corpse. Can't you smell it, kid? I know who you are now. You can't scare me. In your dreams, you dare challenge me, you little brat. A little while later, Leroy called home from the Air Force Base to check on things, but he didn't hear Wynn's voice. Instead, it was the voice of a stranger. Who the hell are you? What makes a brave man tremble, huh, Leroy? Is that you? No. It's us. Suddenly, Wynn's voice broke in saying he was terrified. Son, it's Dad. Where are you? Tell me where you are. I'm coming right now. You guys throw the kid in the car for me. We gotta keep the meat fresh if we want it to taste good. Listen here, you dare hurt my son, and I will rip your heart out. Upon hearing that the bastard, Pennywise, hung up, leaving Leroy even more consumed with rage. Suddenly a thick, heavy fog began to slowly roll into the town of Derry. Seeing the strange phenomenon, the townspeople panicked and scattered in all directions. Yet there was still a woman, standing there smiling in a creepy, eerie way. Wherever the fog touched, the leaves withered and died, leaving the military personnel completely stunned. At the high school, the period bell suddenly started ringing. The principal announced that students were dismissed from the rest of their classes and requested everyone to gather in the auditorium immediately. Once everyone was settled in, the principal walked onto the stage to introduce someone to them, with a legendary character, and that's none other than Pennywise the Dancing Clown. When I close my eyes and dream of you all, I see your lovely faces, and I can even taste them too. But oh boy, I just want to cry out loud having to say goodbye. After hypnotizing the students into a trance, the clown began to blow a haunting horn, leading everyone to float behind his carriage deep into the woods. Meanwhile, the three girls from the observation deck finally saw the strange fog phenomenon blanketing the town. Curious, they went down to check it out, only to discover tons of missing person posters plastered on the walls. Oh my God. All of these people are students from our school. There's even one of me. Could it have kidnapped all of them? Unsure if this was real or just one of Pennywise's tricks. The three girls immediately rushed back to school to find out the truth. The second they entered the auditorium, they found the principal's body, All their classmates were nowhere to be found. So it's true. It really did take all of them. But how did he even pull that off? While the three of them were racking their brains, a missing person poster flew toward them. Oh my God, it's Win. It took Win too, you guys? This news left Ronnie incredibly worried, and she wanted to go save Win right away. But they had no idea where the clown had taken him. Lily's sharp eyes spotted bloodstains on the ground. If they just follow this trail, they'll definitely find that demonic clown. When they face him, they can use the holy dagger for self-defense. With the situation being urgent, the three girls jumped on their bikes to chase Pennywise. But after riding for a while, they realized these junker bikes couldn't catch up to that monster if they pedaled until next year. Fortunately, a milk truck just happened to be parked on the side of the road. And as luck would have it, the driver was already dead. Without a second thought, the three girls quickly hopped in the truck and cranked it up. Having watched her dad drive before, Match knew how to work the gears, so she took the wheel herself, steering the vehicle and flooring it, completely ignoring the rules of the road. At this point, the fog had blanketed the entire West Forest and land, spreading all the way to the river on the south bank. With no clue where to find his son, Leroy had to go ask Halloran for help. But Halloran was in a miserable state. After a long, sleepless night, he felt the room grow heavy. Invisible whispers and ghosts clung to him like glue. Painful memories surfaced like cracks in his mind, sending him into a panic and making him lose his grip on reality. Faint laughter echoed from the dark corners, and icy touches reminded him he would never find peace, pushed to his breaking point. His mind was a mess, overwhelmed by despair. And in his weakest moment, Halloran was about to use his gun to end it all, seeing it as the only way out from the endless torment. Just then, Leroy burst in, pleading with the soldier to stop. "It took my son, and I have no idea where he is. Please, I'm begging you, use your psychic powers to help me find him. I swear I'll never forget this favor." Seeing the pure sincerity on Leroy's face, Halloran decided to put down the gun and agreed to help out. Leroy immediately drove Halloran straight out of the Air Force Base. After discovering what happened, Fuller rushed into the command center to report to General So. Meanwhile, Leroy arrived at Aunt Rose's house and reunited with his wife. Hearing the news that their son had been kidnapped by Mrs. Hanlon was sick with worry. Leroy tried to reassure his wife, telling her not to worry. With Halloran's psychic abilities and the mother-son bond between Hanlon and Wynne, they were bound to find the boy and bring him home safe and sound. However, Aunt Rose said that doing just that would be useless. Why, even if Halloran finds the kid, he stands no chance at all against it to get him back. Leroy, what are we supposed to do now? Right now, since General So destroyed one piece of the sacred pillar, it was able to break out of the cage. So to defeat it and seal it away again, we must find the holy dagger to replace the sacred pillar that was destroyed. Only then is there any hope of saving Wynne. However, Halloran must use his psychic powers to find the dagger before it moves past this point. That is the furthest spot where the holy dagger's energy can still connect with the other 12 sacred pillars. If it makes it past that location, it will no longer be affected by the pillars. And at that specific spot, there is a dead pine tree on the south bank of the river. It's been there since before the ancestors of the Native Americans. To restore the cage, you must drive the holy dagger into the ground inside the trunk of that pine tree. But there is an immediate obstacle. If those ghosts keep harassing Halloran, how is he supposed to focus and tap into his psychic powers? Luckily, Aunt Rose knows a remedy made from maturin root. Mixed with water, it will help Halloran connect with everything born from that evil realm. Born over there. So can it drown out those haunting voices? Of course. When one door in the mind opens, another must close. Sure enough, after drinking the tea, Halloran was able to see the three girls. They were following the blood trail deep into the West Forest. Because the road was bumpy and full of potholes, Match lost control and crashed the truck into a tree. The holy dagger was accidentally thrown from the vehicle. Match quickly ran over to pick it up, but Lily wouldn't let her and grabbed the dagger herself, putting it in her bag. After that, the three girls continued their pursuit of it. Suddenly, Lily snapped and started thinking her friends were just using her, so she took off running. Arch and Ronnie immediately chased after her to get the dagger back. It was their only shot at saving Wynne. After a brief struggle, the two girls managed to wrestle the dagger away from Lily. Only then did she realize those thoughts from before were caused by the dagger's influence. Because of that, Arch suggested they take turns carrying the dagger, so it wouldn't mess with any one person's head for too long. Back at the house, Halloran saw everything unfolding and filled everyone in. Since the situation was critical, they all piled into the car to go after the three girls. On the way, Aunt Rose explained that the holy dagger is actually a stray fragment from an ancient comet. Just like other objects with a spirit of their own, the holy dagger desperately wants to return to its host, the comet. so the further it's taken from its original spot, the more energy it emits, making people lose their minds or even go insane. By now, the three girls had found Pennywise's carriage and the group of people floating over the frozen river. Without thinking twice, they ran over to find Win. He was just like the others, completely hypnotized and unconscious. Back in the car, Halloran saw all of this through his vision. This made Aunt Rose really anxious, because even at top speed, they wouldn't reach the kids before it passed the dead tree. If that's the case, we have to try to block his path. But how? Remembering the time in the helicopter, Halloran had managed to enter its mind once before. He could do it again to hold it back. At the same time, the girls tried to pull Win down, but no one could reach him. Hearing the noise, Pennywise slowly stepped out of the carriage and growled, "The three of you, one's a dummy, one's a freak, and one's just pathetic. You trying to join my circus or what, Ronnie?" Quickly raised the holy dagger to ward off the evil entity. He then showed off his skills, moving like a blur with supernatural speed, sending the three girls into a panic. In a split second of distraction, Match was snatched by the leg and dragged away by Pennywise. Then the monster suddenly called her Match Tozier, leaving her completely confused. Pennywise then explained that Tozier would be Match's married name in the future. At that time, they would have a son named Richie, and it would be that kid and his loser friends who would eventually kill him. Or maybe they already did. I get mixed up, he mused, because the past, present, and future all look the same to me. To stop all that from happening, I'll just eat you now and call it a day. But as Pennywise lunged forward with his mouth full of razor-sharp teeth, his entire body suddenly froze. It turned out Halloran was using mind control, pulling Pennywise's consciousness back to the past to confront Mata and the rest of the circus troupe. Taking advantage of the opening, Match ran back to Lily and Ronnie. Everyone who was floating immediately dropped to the ground as Pennywise's magic wore off. Moments later, Leroy's car screeched to a halt. Seeing that their son was safe, Leroy and Mrs. Hanlon were overjoyed. However, there was no time for small talk. All the students needed to get out of this danger zone fast. To avoid being driven mad by the holy dagger, Leroy and Tanyan would take turns carrying it to the base of the pine tree. They thought with the clown paralyzed it would be easy, but out of nowhere Leroy was shot in the leg. Then Tanyan was hit right in the neck. It turns out General So's troops were the ones blocking them. The poor young man died a senseless death. Seeing the tragedy, General So didn't want any more bloodshed and ordered his soldiers to lower their weapons. The children anxiously ran over to Leroy's side. With the situation being so critical, Leroy had no choice but to hand the holy dagger to Win, and the others giving them strict instructions. "You kids hide in the mist immediately. Take this dagger, run to the pine tree, and bury it deep beneath its roots. That's the only way to trap and seal it away. Go fast, don't worry about me." "But I'm scared, Dad. I'm not brave like you are." "Listen to me. I love you for who you are. Win, not because I want you to be just like me. Do you understand? All right, now go, son." Because the fog was so thick, General So couldn't see from a distance that the children had run off. His only goal was to capture Leroy, to keep him from causing any more trouble. By chance, General So spotted Pennywise standing motionless. Intrigued, he approached to get the better look at the entity known as It. Meanwhile, the kids had made it to the base of the tree. But the dagger suddenly emitted a powerful force, pulling Win backward. The three girls immediately teamed up to hold their friend steady as they struggled to push toward the tree trunk. The further they went, the stronger the dagger's resistance became, making every step an uphill battle. Inside the clown's subconscious, the circus owner was calling him Bob Gray and telling him to cut back on the booze. "We found you in a ditch out there. Looks like you got hammered and fell right in." "What the hell are you talking about? I'm not Bob Gray." "Then who are you?" "Peter Rabbit, you dare talk back to me. I am a god, I am the eater of worlds." Hearing that, the owner slapped him hard. "I think you're so drunk you're becoming delusional." At the same time, in the real world, General So was thrilled to be witnessing it, this clearly for the first time. "I don't know if you can hear me, but for the longest time I wondered if you were real or just a child's nightmare. Looking at you now, it turns out you're both real and a nightmare. I know you've fallen under Halloran's mind control. Don't worry, I'll help you break the spell." After saying that, General So immediately ordered his soldiers to escort Halloran and the others outside. Because of this, Pennywise realized he was being pulled into an illusion. He ripped the mask off the circus owner's face. "Oh my God, Halloran, you really are a sneaky one. Hey, you're only free because of me. Now get out of here." Showing a bit of mercy because General So helped him, the clown spared his life. But suddenly, the clown caught General So's scent. "So, you're the boy who met me in the woods all those years ago." "Wait, what are you saying? Are you that scrawny demon?" "That's right." Remembering the old grudge of being shot in the eye, the clown flew into a rage and bit General So's head off. Then the evil entity leisurely ran toward the children. catching a glimpse of Pennywise's true face running past them. Everyone was stunned, their souls nearly leaving their bodies. Taking advantage of the soldiers' distraction, everyone immediately fought back and seized the guns. Right after that, Leroy fired a shot that blew the clown's head apart, knocking him down. The kids seized the opportunity, fighting against the dagger's resistance, as they slowly approached the tree to plunge it in, but they still weren't strong enough. The dagger was pushing back with incredible force. Incredibly, Pennywise quickly sprouted another head. Leroy tried to fire another shot, but unfortunately he was out of ammo. Pennywise then blasted a beam of light, knocking Leroy unconscious. Suddenly, Halloran saw the spirits of Chief, Sesky, and Little Rick running over to help their friends drive the dagger in. Sensing the danger, the clown rushed toward the children. Aunt Rose raised her gun and fired to slow the clown down. Thinking fast, he immediately sprouted bat wings and took to the air. Seeing this, everyone was plunged into despair. The demon prepared to tear the children to shreds. At the very last second, when everything was on the line, the kids managed to drive the dagger in just in time. The ground activated, triggering the energy and linking the 12 remaining sacred pillars. Pennywise was instantly sucked back into the cage. Then all the forms he had ever taken were slowly stripped away by the divine light, from the infant monstrosity to the demon in the pickle jar. Finally, it was reduced to just 3 lights fleeing into the western woods. It was all over. Leroy regained consciousness. With General so dead, Colonel Fuller had no choice but to abort the mission. The kids felt the presence of the spirit that helped them. It felt so warm and familiar. They were certain it was Rick and no one else. Only Aunt Rose suffered the tragic loss of her beloved nephew. As for Mata the nurse, she was still so haunted by Pennywise that she had to be committed to a mental asylum. The next day, the skies cleared up. Only then could they hold a funeral for Rick. The sudden loss of such a kind and sweet boy brought everyone to tears in deep mourning. Halloran was no longer tormented by evil spirits. Now he only saw the gentle souls. He comforted Rick's parents, telling them to stay strong because their son would always be by their side. After the funeral, Ronnie said goodbye to Wynne with a deep, passionate kiss. She and her father, Han, had to move away and take on new identities to live a peaceful life. Leroy's family also wanted to leave Derry, a place filled with too much danger. Aunt Rose, however, asked Leroy to stay. Even though it was sealed, this wasn't the end. Who knows if another madman like General So might try to open that cage one day. So Aunt Rose wanted Leroy to stay and guard the sacred pillar. But Leroy turned down the mission. He had done his time and only wanted a quiet life, with his wife and son somewhere peaceful. But after thinking it over for a while, Holland felt a bit of a lingering connection to the town of Derry. So she decided that the whole family would stay and take on the mission passed down from Aunt Rose. Meanwhile, Halloran decided to head to London to start his career. Before the soldier left, Leroy expressed his deepest gratitude, thanking Halloran for going all out to save Wynne. Leroy swore he would never forget this debt of kindness. If Halloran ever needed anything, he just had to call Leroy on his personal hotline. Finally, Matt and Lily had some free time to head up to the observatory. As they stood there talking, remembering how they were almost eaten by the clown, Matt shuddered and told her, "It talked to me." "About what?" "He said I'm going to have a son named Richie and that he and his friends will kill it in the future. For real." The clown also said that the past, present, and future are all the same to him, and that his death is actually the moment he is born. So you're saying he can travel through time? I don't know. But if that's true, then the clown could go back and kill our parents to keep us from ever being born. Then what do we do? Well, that would be their fight to win. There's nothing we can do about it. Time flew by, and 26 years later, it is now October 1988. Nurse Mata is now old and frail. Suddenly, one day, someone unexpectedly hung themselves in the asylum, leaving their family heartbroken. Despite the tragedy, Nurse Mata just smiled and said, "In this town of Derry, no one is ever truly dead. So don't be sad, young lady.